Okay, so welcome everybody to the fourth live streamed event under the IPM Consider It Done initiative. Today we've got a very special guest from Citrix, and I'll let Adam Barry, the Managing Director of IPM, introduce him in a moment. I'm Tim Freestone, I'm the moderator. I'll be addressing or asking questions to our presenter at the end. And just to let you know how that will go down, on your left you'll notice a chat module. If you want to ask questions, go ahead and type it into that feed. I will collect them on my end and pose them to the presenter towards the end. The other thing is, to your right, you'll notice an appointment scheduling feature. This is to take your questions to the next level with someone from IPM and Citrix, or if we don't get to address your questions during this presentation, that's a good opportunity or a good way to get them addressed is a follow-up phone call with the team over here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Adam Barry. He's the Managing Director of IPM. He's going to tell you a little bit about the Consider It Done initiative. Then he'll introduce our special guest speaker for today. So Adam?
Hello, Tim. Thank you so
Good to
much.
see you.
Thank you so much. Well, hello, everybody. As Tim mentioned, I am Adam Barry, Managing Director at IPM. And just wanted to point out how amazing I think this technology is that we're using today to teach you about our Consider It Done initiative. This technology, as I think you'll see with other technologies, will really help in your business initiatives. IPM is a Citrix Platinum partner. Been working with Citrix Technologies for many, many years. We are the oldest standing Citrix Platinum in the entire Northeast. What we're going to talk about today is by involving or using Citrix Technologies, you're going to hear terms about business agility, making sure you don't say no to your business users. Last week, if you caught our Consider It Done initiative, Chuck Hollis from EMC said, your responsibilities or your competitive advantage or who you're competing with could just very well be your user's credit card. If IT doesn't provide the services that the users need, sometimes now it's very easy for your users to take a credit card, order up those services, and jeopardize potentially what could be your technology goals. So with that, I'm very proud and happy to be standing at Citrix corporate headquarters. I'm going to introduce Fernando Campo, VP of Americas, who's going to come and talk to you a little bit about what Citrix can do for your business. Thank you. Fernando?
Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's actually a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank everyone for your time and participating in this Consider It Done installment in which we're actually talking about Citrix. As Adam mentioned, I'm actually the Vice President for the Americas at Citrix, so I basically own all of the customer-facing functions for the Americas, and I'm actually very proud to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about our company. There's three main objectives that I would like to accomplish today. The first one is to do a little bit of a level set around Citrix, where we are today, for some of you that have actually been working with our technology for several years. The way that you think about us and the way that you perceive Citrix may be based on some of the old use cases that we used to support, primarily remote access, delivering some difficult to deploy applications and so on. And it's much more than that, and we have a much broader message. So I'd like to talk a little bit about basically our overview. The second objective is to talk about some of the business trends that we are seeing in the marketplace that are actually shaping IT in a very profound way. And then as a third objective, talk about how we can actually enable you to be able to exploit those business trends so that you're actually establishing yourself as a leader within your business in terms of supporting the business goals, aligning, but also helping drive business transformation. So it all starts with our vision as a company, and our vision is very simple. It's about creating a world where people can work and play from anywhere. Key emphasis on the words people, the end user. Everything centers around the end user and their experience, and then anywhere. The ability to use any type of device, being in any location across any type of network, and so on. That has implications from an IT perspective in terms of how we actually set up and what we can enable within your organizations. And so when it relates to IT, it's really all about being able to establish and to create a model in which you're providing an on-demand service and driving much more business agility, security. So, it's really important that it's done in a secure way, and then being able to do all of this while you are actually reducing operating costs. From the standpoint of the user, it's really about the any message, is to enable work from any location using any type of device at any time that you wish to use it. So just a couple of quick points on Citrix that talk about just our presence in the market, which we thought it was a much better thing to do than talk about the history of the company and how long we have been in business, although it's actually 20 plus years. And so a lot of our technology, even the technology that is being used from a virtualization perspective, has tremendous maturity, and it's actually based on core technology that we have been building since the late 80s. So today we're actually very proud to say that we have a presence at 99% of the Fortune 500 companies. Through that, we have been able to acquire 230,000 plus customers, and when you aggregate all of those, there's 100 million corporate users that are actually touching our solutions in one way or another every day. Through our NetScaler platform, we actually are front-ending several websites, most of the larger websites in the world, and when you add up the usage and the number of people that are going across those websites, it's actually 75% of all internet traffic is actually going through a NetScaler appliance. And so, tremendous presence when it comes to web applications and being able to optimize the delivery of those. Zen, and particularly Zen Server, which is our server-side hypervisor, is the primary hypervisor used for cloud providers. So we actually consider it to be the engine of the clouds. And then with our Citrix Online offerings, GoToMeeting, GoToMyPC, GoToAssist, GoToWebinar, we are actually one of the top software as a service vendors in the world. So that's a little bit about our market presence. In addition to that, just a couple of very quick statistics about the company. In terms of size, 2010 we had bookings revenue in the range of $1.9 billion. The company is about 6,500 employees, and but what's most important is the reach that we are able to accomplish through our network of partners. So we actually have 10,000 partners worldwide. And that gives us presence in 100 countries currently. IPM, which is our platinum partner in the Northeast, actually, as Adam was saying, the longest standing partner out of the New York area, is actually a prime example of the partnership model that we have in terms of how we go to market. So we build the solutions, we build a lot of the technology, and we take it to market through our network of partners. So at Citrix, we believe that we are in the middle of a very important and transformational change in the way that IT is delivered, consumed, etc. So it's a revolution in the IT world. In the same way that several years ago there was a very significant shift from a host-based model to client-server, PCs taking over more control, the users starting to take over more control, but that finally ending up in a situation in which distributed environments were actually the norm. We actually are starting to see a transition, and this actually has been going on for some time. Some of it started with the great growth that the World Wide Web had back in the late 90s, early 80s. The dot-com revolution, starting to go back and do more server-based and host-based activity. But we're definitely moving more and more to an era that we actually call the cloud era. And there's different characteristics of the cloud era. Some of them that I mentioned here, device and network independent, so not necessarily being tied to a specific standard, a specific platform. Any-to-any access, any application, any type of IT resource to any user using any type of device, but being able to do that in a way that is secure by design. For the users to be able to have self-service experience, to be able to provision their own applications and their own resources that they want to use, whether they are provided by corporate IT or whether they are brokered through corporate IT but actually provided by an external vendor. And with a lot of the SaaS applications available and SaaS type of resources available through cloud services, it's actually a great way to be able to self-provision, but at the same time having IT in control over that provisioning. Elastic service and variable cost. So being able to burst from a capacity perspective without necessarily having to plan and design only for top, for the peak workloads. And then last but not least, thinking about the overall end user experience in terms of design. So designing for that experience. One of the things that has made Apple so popular and basically such a standard across everything that is consumer products, electronics, etc., but also obviously in the IT world, is the amount of care and the amount of thought process that they have given to the whole concept of designing to that user experience. And that's actually one of the areas where we have been focusing tremendously at Citrix, is making sure that the overall experience, not only the technology, not only what we're doing in terms of solving a business solution, providing a business solution, but it's also the experience that an end user goes through is totally transformed, totally different. And as a result of that, they actually want to consume more of the services that you're providing. So a lot of this obviously is being driven by different market factors, and we think that one of the primary ones, and probably the one that has the most force behind it, is the concept of consumerization. And we've been talking about consumerization for the last few years, and it's a very significant driver. Tell me when to go. All right, so we're talking about consumerization before we had some technical problems, which we apologize for. So the way we define it is basically it's that delta between the expectations and the requirements that end users have and our ability to deliver them to following the traditional enterprise IT model. And as long as there is this difference, as long as there is this delta, there is going to be tension. There's going to be an expectation that users have that is not necessarily going to be met by corporate IT. And I think that tension and that lack of balance is actually going to drive more change in IT over the next 10 years than any other business trend. So, what's behind this, and what are some of the drivers behind consumerization? One of them is the workforce that has been entering the economy basically in the last 10 to 15 years, which we call the echo boomer or echo generation. And there's a certain set of characteristics that come with this group, and most of them are actually really positive. I've actually done a lot of reading up in terms of literature that sociologists have produced and so on about the echo generation, and there's some really unique traits about them. I'm not going to get into all of them, but some of the key ones are around the way that they manage time and the way that they have been exposed to technology from a very early age that actually makes them much more open to it. But as a result of that, they also have a much higher expectation about what they are going to be able to get, and the fact that they are going to be able to, for example, use their own devices. And so in the same way that people have come into the workplace in the last few years bringing their own cell phone with an expectation that the company that they are going to work for will pay for their plan, but they will be able to keep the same number and the same phone, they want to be able to do the same thing with their laptop, their iPad, etc. And they want to be able to use those to access all of the corporate applications. today, whether it's sanctioned or not, whether we have the infrastructure to provide it or not, we've actually done some research and have found that over 1/3 of information workers are actually using devices that are not sanctioned by IT. They are not corporate assets. They're actually devices that they bring on their own, and there's various reasons for that. But in general, users believe that it's okay to do that as long as they can actually be more productive. Within Citrix, we did our own survey, and we actually asked a very simple question about, on any given day, how many types of end user devices are you using to be able to do work? And there's, it spans, all the way from only one device, very few people only using one device, all the way to 5 or more. I think that some of the people in our product development team, some of the technicians are going to be inclined to be using more devices, but the majority of the organization is actually using 3 devices. And so, several years ago, we implemented a program in which you could actually bring your own laptop to work, and then we would actually provision and we would deliver the applications and the IT resources and access to the data that you needed to be able to do work within Citrix. And we actually call that program BYOC. We're actually rethinking the name of it, given the fact that now it's actually 3 different devices, and we're calling it BYO3. And the 3 devices, you can actually boil it down to 3 primary use models. One is the smartphone, independent of brand. So by the way, there's no brand that we're actually trying to either promote or talk about here. This could be any type of manufacturer. And actually, that's part of the point, is that we would support all of them. So smartphones, tablets, and then a desktop device, typically a laptop. And each one of them has a different use case, a use model. The smartphone, mostly used for snacking on information. It's typically what you would use in between meetings to just check and see if someone has left you a voicemail, texting, things that happen in a very short period of time, and you're basically just snacking on information and returning information quickly. A tablet used mostly for what we call dining on information. You actually want to spend, an hour or so just responding to email and so on, and a tablet is perfect for that. And then as you are trying to do things that deal more with creating content, editing content, a lot of the things that are very document-centric, then you would go with a desktop device, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, a PC-based desktop, a Mac, etc., is what you would use. So, items that are more on the left side of the spectrum, the smaller devices being more app and micro app centric, and then the higher horsepower, I guess more comfortable from a keyboard perspective type of devices, more document centric, and where you actually do more work creating. And the key is to be able to find a model in which, with the same infrastructure, you can deliver the same set of applications to the different devices. One way of looking at this, one way of modeling it, is to think about a factory, and within a manufacturing organization, a factory, and then the distribution side of the business. The factory typically being the area where we're focusing on reducing costs, optimizing operations, retooling, maybe one example of how we get there. And then the distribution side is really more of the growth driver for the organization, and that's where we can implement things like global logistics. But the whole point there is to be able to gain more agility so that we increase our capacity for growth. And so as you think about that model, there's an analogy in the way that we deliver IT services as well. And the factory we see as the cloud, and basically by cloud I don't only mean an external cloud. It also includes the cloud that you would set up internally, potentially a private cloud, but that's just a different model in the way that you would deliver IT resources. And then on the distribution side, you have this BYO3 concept. You have the end user devices and the ability to be able to deliver applications to any of them. And provide more agility to the business that way, extending information, apps, etc., to the users. And the main goals and the main things that we're trying to optimize for on the end user side is just make sure that we delight them, that we create a situation where they want to consume more of the IT services that you are providing. Now, wouldn't it be great if you actually had your end users asking for more, as opposed to figuring out ways in which they can actually bypass and go to, as Adam was saying, to external providers, which they can today provision very quickly with a credit card. So you want to be able to attract them, to create an environment where it's not only cool, but it's actually productive, and it's in their best interest to be productive, to be able to access company information and resources, applications, etc., that you are providing. And then on the side of the cloud, being able to provide that elasticity, to be able to accommodate for peak usage times, without necessarily having to build a massive infrastructure, by being able to burst out to external services and so on, or being able to build your own model that way. So in between the two, there's basically what follows each individual, right? It's the everything that is related to your persona, your email, your contacts, your calendar, the social graph, the way that you interact with others. And we actually call that the personal cloud. And we actually see that as a very key element going forward that is being driven very heavily by consumerization that we need to support from an IT perspective. We can no longer ignore that or assume that it is going to be something totally separate. We need to address it and figure out a way to do it in a secure way, so that there's a firewall between the environment that is supporting company type activity and personal activity for that end user. So we see consumerization as a trend that has a tremendous driving force. It is going to continue to drive change within IT, and we are actually betting for it, not betting against it. We actually don't think that it is going away anytime soon. There are too many factors that actually are driving it. And thinking about what would be the best way to position ourselves to be able to take advantage of this, if you see it as a potential conflict between you as an IT service provider and the user, we think about the whole concept that's described in The Art of War, which is that a war is not necessarily fought head to head. It's typically won through strategy, through the right strategy. And so as it relates to consumerization, as it relates to delighting end users, we believe that the best way to manage that and actually to take advantage of that momentum is to be able to feature it instead of fighting it. So it's a key trend. We are seeing it. It's actually driving a lot of demand for our solutions. And the sooner we come to grips with the fact that it is real, the sooner we'll be able to position ourselves and get ahead of the curve in terms of providing the right solutions. So this requires a different mindset. If you think of the desktop, for example, instead of thinking of a desktop as something that we are refreshing and there's a refresh cycle that we have to budget for and so on, really we want to transform that mindset to rethink the way that the desktop should be delivered. And with Zen Desktop 5, which is our flagship product and our primary desktop virtualization product, you actually have the tools, the technology to be able to drive this transformation. Some of the features from Zen Desktop 5, and I'm not going to go through the entire list because there's a lot of collateral and documentation that you can access through our website. But the bottom line is that everything that I talked about earlier in terms of enabling that on-demand service delivery capability to any type of end-user device with sessions that run on servers in a centralized way, that independent of whether your network connection drops, that session is still alive. You can reconnect to it. You haven't lost any of the data. It's all protected and it's all secured. All of those things can be accomplished through Zen Desktop. So it enables you to say yes, to be able to say yes to any device, to any application, regardless of what type of runtime environment it requires locally, because remember, it's running in the data center, and you can deliver any type of app to whether it's an Android smartphone, tablet, same thing with iPads and iPhones, any type of end-user device. So one key point as we think about this transformation that we're seeing and also the change in mindset that we are seeing within IT is the whole concept of viewing initiatives in which we're actually investing in IT not only from the standpoint of the ROI and the total cost of ownership, which are actually really important things, and they are baseline requirements to be able to justify any type of project, but also looking at the other side of that equation, which is the total value of ownership. And it's all of the sometimes intangibles, but many times tangible value items that you are able to drive by implementing this type of environment, basically a cloud-based services model in which you can adapt quickly to change. Some examples of that, it gives you greater agility to handle reorganizations, merger and acquisition activity, any type of movement of users. It's facilitated because everything is centralized. You don't have to worry about touching every single one of the end user devices. Same thing with new employees. As you onboard them, you can actually afford to implement a program like a BYOC or BYO3 to be able to deliver access to any type of device. It also, some of the trends around the way that we are using facilities and having flex desking, hoteling, etc. You're no longer attached to a specific device. Basically, your apps, your data follow you. Your profile follows you. It's it's great in terms of expanding and opening new branch operations. Tremendous value from a green computing perspective, so it's very eco-efficient. And then it enables the bring your own, your BYO3 initiatives. So in wrapping up, total value of ownership, and again, doesn't mean that we are ignoring total cost of ownership, but total value of ownership, another key trend and another key way of looking at IT differently, at how IT can become more strategic in aligning with the business objectives of the organization and being able to drive growth. And we see this as a transformation in thinking, a transformation in mindset of how we approach some of these investment projects going forward. So, things that in the past we might have thought about as assumptions in the way that we build systems, and the fact that we would design a system based on the 80-20 rule, what's assumed to be the norm for 80% of the users is what we will design for, and then the others will deal by exception, and we'll figure out a way to handle them. And some of the examples of that is an assumption that most employees, most users would be based out of an office as opposed to being mobile. The fact that the assets are all going to be company assets as opposed to a mixture of company and personal assets as well, like some of these laptops and user devices and so on. A wired network, so building offices that have wiring and so on as opposed to a wireless network. On-premise, everything being hosted on-premise versus being able to leverage some of the assets of the cloud. Monolithic environments, standards-based environments where everything may be, provided by the same vendor as opposed to being able to leverage not only best of breed, but micro-centric type of applications, resources, etc. And then thinking of application suites as opposed to application stores. So we actually see this as, as we move into this cloud era, flipping, and actually what used to be the exception before now becomes the primary assumption. So, in closing, as a final point, and this is actually what we'd like to advocate is that we are actually starting to create more leaders and leading the IT, the new IT conversation, and there's several aspects of it. Again, in the way that we would enable these types of environments. If you look at the model of distribution and the factory and what we're trying to enable, looking at all of the things that happen on the distribution side, on the end user side, it's really all about gaining more personal productivity and flexibility to the business. And how would we enable that? Through these types of technologies, collaboration, a service delivery network that is robust and flexible, and then desktop virtualization. And then our products and our offerings that map into that space, GoToMeeting from a collaboration perspective, NetScaler for your a robust service delivery network, and then Zen Desktop as the desktop virtualization platform. On the factory side, and to be able to optimize what you have in the data center and create more of a cloud type model, being able to provide infinite capacity and being able to respond to changes in demand by having more elastic efficiency. Desktop virtualization is still very centric to all of that. cloud bridging, so that you can easily go from your own internal cloud, your own private cloud, to external and public clouds, and be able to leverage those resources in a way that is transparent to the user and in a way that is secure. And then also being able to support this concept of consumerization, Zen Desktop, NetScaler, and then Zen Server as the engine of the cloud. So, again, in closing, this is what we're advocating. To be a leader, IT has a great opportunity with a lot of what's emerging now to be a leader for the organization in terms of driving business change and business transformation, and inspire big ideas, being able to enable better business performance. And it's really, really critical that there's that connection with the end user, with the customer, so that they actually want to consume more of your services. Staying focused on the vision and the objectives of the organization, but also on your customers, who in many cases are also users of your technology, and then in the people within your organization. There's a lot of retooling and a lot of skills development that goes along with any change of the type that we are seeing and we're going through right now. And then using all of that to gain more business agility, to be able to embrace change and actually be ahead of the change, removing the hard coding, and then being able to execute quickly when that's the requirement from your executives. So I'd like to thank you very much for the time and listening to the pitch. And I believe we have some time allocated for Q&A.
Well, thank you very much, Fernando. That was very, very good.
Awesome.
One of the questions that I hear a lot about are customers will say, well, VDI is not right for me. Mm-hmm. How would you go about addressing that when you hear that in the marketplace?
So, VDI is not necessarily the only model that we see for desktop virtualization. Desktop virtualization is a much broader concept, and through FlexCast, we actually offer a number of different modes of being able to virtualize desktop delivery. VDI is one of them. VDI actually works great in certain use cases, but again, through FlexCast, you are able to virtualize the application itself, which in some cases actually is the right model. In some cases, you're able to stream the application and the desktop itself to the end user. In some cases, you can actually go as extreme as being able to have a hypervisor that runs on the desktop itself and be able to firewall your personal versus your business environment within it. So VDI may not be the answer for every single user type, but desktop virtualization, we believe it is, and it's actually a type of thing that can enable that business transformation we were talking about.
Okay. The other thing that I see a lot now is Citrix is doing a lot of advertising. Mm-hmm. And the latest one that I've seen on LinkedIn and some other sites is Citrix never met a hypervisor it didn't like.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit for the users?
Sure. So, we pride ourselves in being very focused on the customer and providing choice to the customer. So we are not going to dictate a specific standard or a specific stack that you need to be able to run on to be able to effectively leverage our solutions. So from that perspective, we are hypervisor agnostic. We have made a decision as a company to be open, and hence the message around being able to leverage this proliferation of end user devices that we have seen with tablets and smartphones and so on, and then the same thing happens on the back end with the hypervisor.
Got it. Tim, do we have any questions, or can I ask one more now? Is that okay? Yeah. So the other thing, I've seen, Citrix many years ago might have been used as a tactical solution. Now, I think we're seeing a lot more strategic adoption of the technology within the enterprise, as well as mid-market. But we're still sometimes, customers, the wall-to-wall strategy sometimes catches on and sometimes doesn't. How would we approach that to make Citrix more strategic versus customers saying, you know what, Zen app works great for remote access? How do we get them to the next level?
So there's really two elements to the answer for that question. One of them is the fact that we have evolved tremendously as an organization in terms of the offerings that we provide, And the fact that we are the leader in desktop virtualization has a totally different implication in terms of the relationship that we have with our customers, because while XenApp might have been used to, to provide a tactical solution in certain cases that were a little bit more narrowly defined, everyone has a desktop. Everyone needs access to the applications the corporate applications that an organization has. And so by having a broader presence on something that is so critical to the success of an organization, we've become much more strategic. So that's one element of it. I think we had great success selling XenApp. Before that, presentation server, MetaFrame, et cetera.
Very good success.
And so a lot of people think of us, and the way that we did that, 10 years ago, and it was mostly a remote access solution. It's not only about that anymore. The second part of the answer to that question is that the going wall to wall with desktop virtualization is not only a technical exercise. It requires technology, of course, but it also requires a very good thought process around the process that you go through, the methodology that you employ, and then the organizational implications that it has in terms of how IT is organized. Because now you're pulling in and centralizing a lot of the components of the environment that before used to be distributed. And actually we've given that a lot of thought, and it's one of the things that we have focused on the most, in addition to just R&D for the products, is how do we facilitate that transformation. We actually call it the desktop transformation model. Okay. And then within that framework, we have a series of templates. We have something called success accelerators that actually helps you plan your transformation. And then in addition to that, a look at what the organizational implications are for IT shops.
Excellent.
Great, thank you, gentlemen. Does look like we do have a couple questions from the audience, and this is just a reminder for everyone out in the virtual audience. Please feel free to post your questions in that chat module, and we'll do our best to address them. First question from Walter. There's been a lot of news around Citrix acquisitions. Can you discuss why there's been so much activity recently? Any comments?
Sure. So there has been a lot of acquisition activity, and I guess we've been able to capitalize on some great opportunities of I guess early stage technologies that were out there that align very well with our strategy. And if you think of some of the bigger ones that we have done in the last 3 to 6 months, they have been aligned with two primary areas of our strategy. One is the whole concept of facilitating, accelerating that journey to desktop transformation, that journey to go wall to wall. And so for that, the RingCube acquisition totally maps to that. Same thing with the most recent one, which was AppDNA. AppDNA is a great way of diagnosing the readiness that an organization has to be able to migrate their applications and migrate them to Windows 7, to a virtual model, and so on. And then RingCube. I'm sorry, I mentioned RingCube, and then Cavisa, which is just a great solution for more simple use cases, and it's just wonderful for the small and medium business segment. The other part of our strategy that I guess has been an area of focus for these acquisitions has been basically strengthening the leadership role that we already have in being able to provide cloud infrastructures. And so the acquisition that we did was about 3 months ago of Cloud.com is just smack in the middle of that space.
Sure.
Great, thank you. We have another question here from Michael. Gets into the weeds a bit, but I was curious about the Zen Desktop pricing. What are the costs around Zen Desktop?
You know what? Great question. It probably requires a little bit more drill down because it's one of those where it depends, right? It depends on which edition of Zen Desktop, and it also depends on volume, etc. And actually, I guess I'll put in a plug for the. We have a scheduling module or an appointment setting module feature that is available through this webcast, and between IPM and us, we will be more than happy to review your options based on your specific needs.
Great. Okay, so question from Bill. Can you touch on the Cisco and Citrix relationship a little bit?
So it's a great relationship, and it's one that is it's relatively young for us. I mean, we've historically had a great relationship from an alliance perspective, number one with Microsoft. But in addition to Microsoft, with some of the server, like the platform providers like HP and Dell and IBM, and those relationships continue. And we have a great relationship with all of those organizations in terms of how we go to market and how our solutions are optimized to run on their platforms. With Cisco, it has been something much more recent, primarily because of their entry into the data center virtualization, the UCS platform, and then most recently with them being able to optimize delivery of the HDX protocol. And it's very synergistic. Cisco has a tremendous footprint and presence at not only our enterprise customers, but pretty much all customers across the board. And so over the last year and a half, in addition to some of the technology announcements that we have made, there's actually been a lot of joint field engagement, going after customer opportunities. So great synergy between the two.
Any questions for me, Tim?
No, it's all for Fernando. Paris is back, though, from recurring Paris. Thanks, Paris, again for posing a question. I know you guys acquired Cavisa. Hope I pronounced that correctly. Yep. Can you shed some more insight on it?
So Cavisa is a desktop virtualization solution, and Cavisa, in terms of the model, of the delivery model, it's really a classic VDI solution, and it's intended for simpler use cases. You can spin it up much faster. So you can set up it's actually VDI in a box is the name of the product. You can set up a VDI in a box very quickly. It does not have the same level of customization or integration with storage, etc., that you would get with Zen Desktop, which, while not as robust, it actually makes it a really good fit for certain use cases. And it's actually the sweet spot for it right now is the SMB, the small and medium business segment, where the requirements are going to be more aligned with that simplicity. And it's actually a way for them to get into desktop virtualization in a fairly low risk way. And then if they decide to grow from it, then there's always the opportunity to move to Zen Desktop.
Okay, great. This is a rather general question. You could probably spend an entire hour on this, but we'll see where we go. Any more information on security for virtualization?
So yes, we could spend an hour on this.
Just want to make sure Nick gets his question asked and see what happens.
No, I mean there's just a couple of things that I'll say as maybe as a teaser, and this may be one where you may want to leverage the appointment setting facility to have a more detailed conversation. But in essence, our solutions are secure by design, and not only inherently into the architecture. So for example, HDX is a protocol that if you, for example, intercept the stream of data that is carrying information back and forth from the data center to the user, you're not going to be able to do anything with it because there's no specific data flowing through it. It's just basically a screenshot. Right. And as you move your mouse or type or have events that cause that screen to change, that's really all that travels across the network. So from that perspective, everything where there's data, the application itself, user profiles, etc., all of that resides in the data center on servers, which is a much better way to protect it than in a distributed environment. So inherently, the architecture is much more secure. And then in addition to that, in terms of how we connect from a networking perspective through Access Gateway, you actually have a smart SSL VPN solution that can detect context. It can detect where you are connecting from, the IP address, the type of network that you're in, whether it's a public network or if you're actually inside of the office LAN, for example. And depending on that context, you can configure it so that it grants different types of access. In some cases, you can restrict printing functionality or saving locally or copy and paste functionality. So there's a lot of things that are inherent in the architecture of the solution that provides for a much more secure environment. But we'll be happy to talk some more about that in detail, through an appointment. I'm sure Adam would love to have that question posted.
Absolutely.
Here's a question for you, Adam.
Oh, yes.
No,
yes, Tim.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, come
on. This is from Chris P. You may have a stab at this if you want, Adam.
Okay.
What is Citrix doing to help companies like mine make transition from app virtualization to desktop virtualization more manageable? Pretty complex. Address that.
You can have that one.
Okay, so it's very simple. We actually have we've had a migration model. I mean, I guess from a commercial perspective, which is a trade-up. It's a trade-up offer. We've had it since we introduced Zen Desktop 4.
Right.
And it's at a very attractive price. You can actually leverage the licenses that you have today with Zen app and actually convert them to trade up. And this actually has been a huge success for us in terms of being able to use the Zen app install base and convert them to desktop virtualization at a relatively low investment level. And so that's another one where you may want to set up an appointment to talk about the details and how we may actually be able to put together an offer, through IPM of how you can trade up to Zen Desktop.
Though.
Let's do it now. Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we're closing just past our 45-minute mark that we promised the audience we'd stay within. So any other questions that come in from the audience? There's one from Chuck. I'll give this a whirl and then we'll close up. How to handle Citrix latency delivery from U.S. headquarters to places that exceeds 300 MS with their local internet? Any product that can help?
I knew there would be a technical question.
Yeah, right?
I knew that there would be something that just goes like this. But you know what? This is another one where we actually have the technology to be able to deal with some of that.
Sure.
At the end of the day, latency. I mean, there's going to be some physical constraints with it. But I think that the best way to answer that is to have a deeper drill down in terms of the technology and what it can enable and how you can actually architect your environment to minimize the impact of that.
Adam, 20 years as a Citrix partner, you've got a couple engineers that can dig into that.
Absolutely. I mean, we have implemented solutions using the Citrix branch repeater product in Asia where we were experiencing above 240 milliseconds of latency, where they actually were trading on an application in New York with 6 monitors in Hong Kong with 240 milliseconds of latency. So Citrix certainly does have solutions, but it does depend on the architecture of the network for Chuck.
Great. Okay, thanks, Chuck, for that last question there. Again, if you have any others, IPM Citrix would be happy to take them offline. Go ahead and submit some dates and times that will work for you in that appointment scheduling functionality to your right. Gentlemen, any final closing thoughts before I get out there and say goodbye?
Fernando, anything?
I'd like to say thank you to everyone for participating on this. Great questions. And a big thanks to our partner IPM, who, as Adam said at the beginning, not only a partner, but we have a great friendship, and it dates back to many years ago. I'm afraid to say how many years ago. But
yes. And I would like to, in conclusion, thank everyone who's helped us today. Shannon Hazing, who's our Director of Marketing, Tim Freestone in the group from Enter Marketing, and of course Stacy Black. Fernando, it's always a pleasure. Looking forward to having a big Q4 2012 and continually to invest in the Citrix strategy that you've outlined. We're really looking forward to it, so thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Gentlemen, go ahead.
We're clear?
We'll close out.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Again, this is the 4th of 6, so if you want to go ahead and come back at the same bat time and bat channel next week. We have 2 more live stream events, and we're very excited, and thanks everyone for attending today. We hope you found it informative, educational, and all that stuff. Thanks a lot.